Hello, I'm Matt Galloway, and this is the Current Podcast. If you're making pizza, do not mix glue into the sauce. Now, that might seem obvious, but a new Google artificial intelligence tool told a user to do just that. Google's new AI Overviews search launched in the United States earlier this month. If you ask it a question, it generates a summary at the top of the page. The answers, though, as we just hinted at, are not always entirely accurate. Shira Ovide is the writer of the Tech Friends newsletter for the Washington Post. Shira, good morning.
Good morning. Yes, do not put glue in pizza ingredients.
Just a cautionary tale for those following along at home. Walk us through this. We'll get to other sideways answers in a moment, but how is this new search tool different from the Google that everybody uses that has become, as we said earlier, a verb?
Right. So the way that it works generally is the way that some of the other newer AI technologies like ChatGPT works, is that Google, using what's called a large language model, which some people have compared to autocomplete on steroids, will take your search and in some cases will use this large language model to generate text entirely by artificial intelligence to try to answer the query that you type into Google.
Is this meant to replace how Google works now?
No, it is supplemental to the way that Google works now.
Okay.
And Google will only show these AI-generated overviews on some types of searches. Google hasn't been very specific about when exactly people might see those, but it is not certainly intended to be a replacement for the familiar Google that people might have been using for the last quarter century.
What's it like to use? It has yet to come here to Canada. It will be coming here in the fall, apparently.
It will come, yes.
Yeah. What is it like to use?
It's interesting, I think is the only way I can phrase it. I think people who use Google now are familiar that sometimes when you type a Google search, it will give you what looks like an answer, right? Like a highlighted answer at the top of the Google search query. If you type, "How tall is Taylor Swift?" you probably won't just get a list of web links. You'll probably get Google's attempt to give you an answer at the top of your search. So would the new AI overviews look a bit like that? They're at the top of search results. They generally have some text that is highlighted, and there's also some links kind of embedded in there if you want to dig a little bit deeper. So it does look a little bit like some of the Google answers that we're used to seeing.
In trying it out, what did you ask it?
Well, I mean, I've asked it all kinds of things, right? You can, again, Google is the one that is determining when you see this AI-generated answer and when you don't. So, and Google says that it's best for kind of complicated questions that maybe you would never have thought to ask Google search. So we did one example that we showed to readers a couple weeks ago where we typed this complicated, personalized query for, best Mexican restaurants in San Francisco that have great margaritas and a fun atmosphere or something like that. And have, are highly rated in Yelp, diner reviews in Yelp. And, that's a kind of query that you probably wouldn't put into Google today because it probably wouldn't give you a great answer. But this AI-generated answer did give us restaurant recommendations based on the criteria that we suggested. I will say that we also asked a professional restaurant critic at the San Francisco Chronicle in California for his take on whether the AI recommendations were good. And he said, no, he wouldn't have suggested any of the things that Google's AI suggested.
You said in a piece that you wrote that if you believe that artificial intelligence is as dumb as rocks, this in some ways might confirm that belief. Aside from the glue on pizza, what are some of the dubious answers that came back in using this?
Yeah, so I will say that some of the examples that went viral were people trying to trick Google's AI, and it worked. But I think the important thing to remember here is that this is experimental technology. So some of the mistakes that it generated, not long ago, someone showed asking Google how to safely pass a kidney stone. And among the instructions that were generated in this Google AI overviews were a suggestion to drink plenty of urine, which again, do not do this.
Goodness.
If someone typed into Google which United States presidents went to the University of Wisconsin at Madison University, and Google's AI had this confident answer, which was complete garbage, including that John F. Kennedy, a president from the 1960s, graduated multiple times from the University of Wisconsin at Madison, including most recently in 1993. Again, totally, completely incorrect. So again, often these AI-generated answers will be correct or at least reasonably okay, but sometimes it produces these laughably wrong errors, and that is just how this technology works.
I was going to say, why is it so unreliable? Part of this is, as you said, it's experimental technology, but it's been made public, at least for some people to use at certain points. So why isn't it bulletproof?
Well, the fun thing, air quotes fun, about these large language models is that they're fed enormous amounts of data from the internet, and it kind of learns patterns from all of the words that we humans have written on the internet for decades, and it tries to come up with the likeliest next set of words in response to your query. The problem with learning from the internet is, as you may have noticed, the internet is full of garbage.
Yes.
It's full of incorrect information. It's full of jokes. It's full of lies and misinformation. And so if you're training a computer on information from the internet, sometimes the output will be just as trashy as the inputs. And again, we don't know the error rates for any of this stuff, and the error rates will definitely decline as this technology advances. But I think it's a reasonable question to ask, as you did. This technology is now public. It's in many millions of Americans' Google right now, and so is this basically ready for prime time? I think is a good question to ask.
And yet this is the promise, is it not, that artificial intelligence has been making, that you will be able to have not just every answer available to you, but much more complicated answers and much more complex answers. And people have been using this already with ChatGPT and what have you for writing, to polish things that they might have written for presentations and what have you, based on complicated prompts. Isn't this what the promise is that Google will then eventually, it won't just be giving me links. It will give me the full and complicated answer that I was never even aware that I was looking for.
That's right. And that is the promise. And in some cases, that promise is fulfilled, right? People are making good use from technologies like ChatGPT and similar large language models today. But I think I want to just reset expectations a little bit. One of the realities of these new forms of AI is that they are difficult to use well right now. If you've tried ChatGPT or Microsoft Copilot or similar technologies and found, I don't really know how to use this, or if you type in a search and it just seems okay, that's not your fault. It is actually difficult to learn how to talk to these things in a way that generates useful information. They also are error prone. I was talking to somebody for this piece that I wrote who's used ChatGPT, or a technology similar to ChatGPT, to help her with software coding, right? Which is kind of an onerous job where you have to, again, talk to computers in their language. And she said it has been a time saver, but that very often the results of this coding helper technology, coding helper AI, is not very good, and she has to correct errors. So she said, you have to have some sophisticated knowledge of software coding in order to use these software coding AI helpers effectively, right? And that's a little bit different than the promise that, ChatGPT will turn anyone into a competent software coder, right? So I just feel like the hype has gotten far out ahead of the reality of many of these AI technologies.
Google makes astronomical amounts of money through its search function and the advertisements that are embedded in search. Why would it expand into AI now?
I think Google has no choice but to expand into AI now. The risk that people have been talking about for 18 months since this version of ChatGPT exploded into the public consciousness is that people will stop Google searching as much as we do now, because you can just ask one of these chatbots for an answer, and that will steal usage away from Google search. And that is an existential risk to Google. And so Google has decided, whether that's the correct decision or not, Google has decided that it needs to disrupt itself, as the saying goes in Silicon Valley, before it gets kind of run over by these chatbots that are stealing people away from Google search. Whether that's the correct calculation, we'll see.
This also has huge implications for organizations that rely on people visiting their webpage, right? Not just, and people have pointed to major journalistic organizations, but it's everybody from those organizations to the people who publish the recipe for butter chicken that you searched up on Google.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I can tell you that just about everybody who has a website is worried about exactly this, right? If Google or if ChatGPT is going to generate information for you, and you maybe never have to click on a recipe website, or you never have to click on a news article to learn what's happening in Papua New Guinea, then that is a risk to anybody that publishes information on the internet. A colleague of mine spoke to somebody who runs a website called and he publishes reviews of kind of weightlifting equipment and gear. And he said, again, it's hard to know exactly what caused this, but he said he's lost a whole bunch of links, of clicks from Google recently. And, he's very worried about that, right? This is the front page, Google is the front page of the internet. For many people, it's our starting point for lots of information. And so if Google is making it less necessary for people to click on news websites or, weightlifting review websites or recipe websites, yes, that is a potential risk to the entire economy of the internet.
This technology is out there. As you mentioned, it's not ready for prime time. Your advice, I think, what you wrote was distrust and verify. Is that how we should approach this?
Yes, and I will say that line is from Simon Willison, who's a British computer programmer. But yes, I think, again, we just need to lower our expectations of these AI technologies. Use them, try them out. If it works for you, great, but never trust these things right now. And make sure before you use any of the information that you verify any of it. Because, again, there's a non-zero chance that it's wrong or garbage.
Shira, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Shira Ovide writes the Tech Friends newsletter for The Washington Post.